Hello everyone. In this video, we'll be looking at the UI4.utils module. This module has some very useful utility options, and we'll go over some of them in this video. Firstly, we'll look at how you can interact with the attribute history. Now in my scene, I have a Gaffer3 node that is creating an area light and making it red. Then I'm overriding it with a second Gaffer3 node and making it blue. And if we go down here to the attributes on this light, we can see it's blue here, and if we click the L, we can show attribute history or show attribute inheritance. Let's choose show attribute history, and it shows us the nodes. So it was originally red and now it's blue, and then you can always just click on one of these nodes to go to it. Pretty handy. We can also do this with code. So if we go to ui4.util.attribute history. Now the attribute history has some interesting methods here. So we can get the node that created the attribute, we can get the inheritance, we can get the node that's last set it, and we can get the entire history. And you can also choose various ways of looking at information, what the start node should be, or op, or port, or graph state, or any of these things, which is quite handy. Now, I've got a couple of examples already to look at this. I'm just going to copy and paste them in. Here's one I made earlier. So I'm going to get the attribute creation node of this light. We're going to look at this attribute. You could just do the path from here, hover over here to get the attribute name, or use a attribute set node and drag it in and copy it. And if we run this, it's going to return a set, and that set has the name of the node, and it brings back the attribute as well. So from here we could then get the value of it. Okay, and this is our Gaffer3 node, which is the one that created it. Next we'll do the set one. It should give us our one node. That's the last one that set it. And then if we get the history, it'll give us all the nodes that changed it. And this gives us the list. So Gaffer3.1 and the Gaffer3.2. So it does it in order of, you know, the one that's changed it last. So this one is the one that wins out, and then that one was before it. We can also then iterate over these. So if we store this in a variable, let's call it history. We can say for item in the attribute history, grab hold of the second item, which will be the actual attribute, and then we can get the value of that. And now because this is a color, it has 3 values, so we're going to use the get nearest sample. It's going to return us a list, and then we can print the node that it's come from and the value that it gave it. Just going to run this, and we can see that the Gaffer3.1 was setting it as blue, and Gaffer3.2 was setting it as red. And we can also look at inheritance. So classic one would be the light list that you can see here. It is a global one, and if we click here, we can say show attribute inheritance, and it tells us it comes from root world. Do the same thing with code. We want to find out where it came from. Run this. Tells us it comes from root world and gives us the group attribute that it comes from. Okay, so that is attribute history. Now let's look at node errors. I'm sure you're familiar with the red node when something has gone wrong in your node graph. If not, let's demonstrate that now with the classic render camera not found in scene. So I have got a very simple scene here that I have not created a camera for, and if I were to right click and preview render, oh, it's gone red, go to the render log, and the camera is not found in the scene. Okay, and if you were to hit the T for tooltip, then you can see what the error is. And you can get errors on nodes for different reasons. This is just a render one. Another example would be a render settings node. If we view this, going to error, and it's going to give us a scene graph error saying it needs a valid 3D input and it has none. So let's have a look at how these errors get created. It's part of the UI4 module. Under the utils, and we have the node errors. Then from node errors, first of all, we have all these different categories. So when a node errors, it could be for a different category. So for example, the render one would be a render one. The render settings was failing on the scene graph, so that'll be a scene graph one. And we can look at these different categories, and there will be a number that's associated with them. If we print out all of these, we'll see that we have file in is 1, and a node connection is 4, and a render error is 0, scene graph error is 3, and a user 1 is 2. We can use these to group our different errors. So let's see how we can get any of these errors. So in the node errors, we have a couple of different functions. We can just get node error from a node. So if we do that and we give it the node or our render node, so let's drag that in. Run this. Oh, get in there, and it tells us the error here. So the camera, blah blah blah, is not found in scene. We can also, if there's multiple errors, so let's do this one again. So we've got more than one. We can iterate over the errored nodes and then use this to find all the errors. So let's do that. We have node errors dot iterate all error nodes. That's going to give us a list, and then we can go over that list and print out each of the errors. So for node in the errored nodes, get the error and then print it out. We run this. We've got our 2, so we've got the camera is not found in scene, and render settings required, 1 valid input but has none. We can also create our own errors. So we can then do set node error. So we can say set node error, and let's give it gaffer node. So let's just grab one of these. Store that as gaffer. We'll make that error, and we'll say for that gaffer node, it will have the error, you have broken the sacred rule, and we'll give it as a category of 2 because it's a user one. We want it to redraw, so actually make it go red, and then set parent error true. So if you want the parent to also error, this is at the top level, but we'll do that anyway. We'll run this. Now our gaffer 3 has gone red, and if we hit the T, not here, over here, there you have broken the sacred rule. Okay. You can also clear errors. So if there's an error that you want to remove, you can clear that. So you can either clear on a specific node, or you can clear all nodes that have a error of a specific category. You could do get the gaffer node and clear the error, and that's gone. Or we can clear anything that has a category of zero for render nodes. That one's gone. And then 3 for scene graph errors. Okay. So that's node errors. That's really handy if you make your own node and you want to present to the user an error. So, error you need to connect in a node, error you haven't specified a scene graph and it needs a scene graph, all those kind of things. Pretty nice. The next thing I want to look at is the icon manager. So if you go to UI4.util, there is the icon manager. Okay. Now you can use the icon manager to find out all the icons that are currently being used, and you can then grab hold of one of those and use it for one of the tools that you're making. So let's do an example of that. Go to the Katana resources and then search paths. If we do that, that will find all the different places where icons can be. And then we can go through those paths and find out if there's any icons we want to grab hold of. Let's do an example of that. So we'll give that paths equals . So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cycle through anything that is an icon, and then if it has lock in the name, we're going to print it out. So there you go. There's all these different icons that you can use that have got lock in the name, and you can just grab hold of those guys and then use it to make an icon. So you can, grab hold of one of these and use it. Now to turn your path into an icon, you can now use the icon manager dot get pixmap from path. So let's do one of these. So we'll have, it will return you your map, and then you can use that. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was the UI4.util external tools. You can use the external tools one and do things like open documents, open files, open file for edit, open images, open URL. So this is pretty handy. Open file for edit is quite similar to how if you had something like an op script, if you click this edit in external editor, so you can give it a file name and it'll open up in the editor that you've chosen. Okay, and that concludes this video. There's some nice little utility functions in here that you can use to help with your UI building. Okay.